Smelly Stank Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. And it's time for a review, an album review, of the new Joey Bada record. Badass, or Before the Money.
Before the money. Not before the money, Anthony. Say the album right. Everything you've ever said is wrong and irrelevant now because you can't say the album title. You're bad.
Joey Bada is a Brooklyn rapper, and this is his debut commercial project right here. He is also seen as the figurehead of New York rap collective, Pro-Era, and this whole story seemed to begin just a few years ago when Joey was catching some massive buzz off of his 1999 mixtape. And even though it's been just a few years since the release of that tape, so much has happened since. He put out that somewhat underwhelming Summer Nights mixtape. We also had the Pro-Era mixtape. We had the Survival Tactics single Get Really Hot that promoted toward that 1999 mixtape. Also the unfortunate and untimely passing of Pro-Era member Capital Steez. Numerous features on numerous records. For a moment he was flirting with signing to Jay-Z's Rock Nation label, and very recently there was a photo of none other than Malia Obama that leaked onto the internet wearing a Pro-Era t-shirt. Easily one of the most epic hip-hop cosigns ever. But all that extra stuff aside, Joey is where he is thanks to his consistency and his style, his talent, his sound. He is easily the most relevant young rapper right now when it comes to the revitalization of New York's classic hardcore hip-hop sound. Hip-hop is aging, it's maturing as a genre, and now it's been 20 years since artists like Black Moon and Smith & Wesson and Nas, Biggie, Jay-Z, Big L, Wu-Tang, A Tribe Called Quest all dropped some of their best stuff, and Joey has been at the forefront of artistically celebrating this newfound nostalgia for what a lot of people are seeing now as sort of a golden age in hip-hop. And Joey also tips his hat to a lot of artists who hit it big in the late 90s, early 2000s, Lauryn Hill, Mos Def, Fugees, MF Doom. Even though a lot of people might argue that the value of lyrics is going straight into the toilet when it comes to a lot of modern hip-hop, simultaneously the genre is establishing its greats that came out in the 90s. And hip-hop eventually moved on past this sound into the bling era of the 2000s because it was a young genre and hungry for success, which is maybe one of my least favorite eras of hip-hop, period, but you know, things have to change, things have to move forward. Regardless, that doesn't mean we don't have room for people like Joey Bada in hip-hop's current day state. People who are great rappers, great writers, and are also a reminder that there is still life in boom-bap drums and just hard-nosed flows. So far in his career, I think Joey's yet to put out a garbage verse, but simultaneously, he hasn't put out a project yet that's totally blown me away. So that's why I've been anticipating this record, on which he is pretty stingy with the features, which is fine because going into this album, I had faith that Joey could carry a project on his own because from what I've been able to gather so far, he's pretty versatile when it comes to his emotions, his topics, as well as his flow. He brings on singers like BJ the Chicago Kid, Chronix, Maverick Sabre. He also has Pro-Era member Diamond Lewis on a feature here. The only appearance that I was sort of uneasy about going into this LP was Rory's. As you may already know, I didn't really care for his breakout project all that much. But when he appeared on Escape 120, I didn't really mind it at all. He came on with a very fiery, fast, Andre 3000-esque verse. What's more impressive about this project is you have Brainfeeder producer Sam I Am on here, up-and-comers like Basquiat and Freddie. Producers like Lee Bannon and Static Selecta team up with Joey once again. You have classic heavy hitters on here like DJ Premier, Kirk Knight of Pro-Era, Chuck Strangers of Pro-Era, as to be expected. Hit Boy, a relatively new producer who's mostly known for his more high-profile projects with people like Beyonce, Eminem, Kanye, Drake, and A$AP Rocky. And Dilla and the Roots make an appearance on the same track. The song Like Me, which is maybe one of the sleepiest, most nocturnal, quietest, unsuspecting instrumentals on the entire record. Not that it's a bad beat, it's not a bad beat at all, but it's not exactly as explosive as the names tagged onto it, that's all. And overall, it's a really good collection of instrumentals. There are some beats here that are very smooth, charming, jazzy, soulful, like the intro track, the outro track, OCB, Peace of Mind. These instrumentals have a very easygoing vibe, which there was a lot of on Joey's Summer Nights mixtape. And even though this same feel appears on this new record here, he does reel it back a little bit, makes room for more hard-hitting tracks, which I like a lot. Other instrumentals here are more moody in tone, maybe a bit more spacious and skeletal, simple, like on Paper Trails or HAZEUS View. And there are legit bangers on this thing too, like Number 99 and Christ Conscious, which is really gritty and hard-hitting despite how hazy it feels. But as much as I like the instrumentals on this record, it's really Joey who ends up stealing the show, which is fine with me because that's what I expect from him. He's the kind of MC that values flow and values wordplay and lyricism in the same way that a traditional MC would, which is not the only way one could or should be an MC, but this very established style, Joey does it justice, and he carves out room for himself within it. As apparent as Joey's influences are, I think he makes compelling songs, and I could easily pick him out of a lineup. So for much of this LP, Joey comes through with really impassioned deliveries and great flows and constant quotables. Like the opening track here, there's one line where he says that he feels inferior in some areas, but he shares wisdom, ... And leading up to that line, there are a ton of lines with just one internal rhyme after another. Also, the Jack the Booty like I'm Sparrow line was cute. There's also the track Paper Trails, where Joey kind of raps about the trappings of fame, and specifically the money that comes along with it. And while the money may help in certain areas, it also attracts a lot of unwanted things as well. And there's a nice Wu-Tang reference at the end of this track. Sometimes Joey's flow on this track feels a little ODB inspired. On the track Big Dusty, I love when he kicks one line off saying he's juxtaposed from or with his pros, meaning the pro era members, and then he's talking about other people biting his flows and how they even jukes the pose, jukes meaning robbed. That was awesome. But this is one of many lines on this record where Joey sort of raps about other people stealing things that he's doing, whether it be rhymes or flows or I guess sort of deliveries. And I guess personally I have to kind of take lines like this in stride because as much as I do like Joey, his influences are so apparent to me. For a genre that is constantly recontextualizing other things, hip-hop is very much obsessed with originality. And maybe that's something that needs to be kind of re-examined as we have more artists like Joey Bada who are so heavily influenced by the old school. Along with good bars and good verses, there are some good choruses on this thing too, like on HAZEUS View. I love the saying on this track where Joey says that we may be riding the same trains occasionally, but I can't see what I can't relate to. There are some low-key cuts in the middle of this LP, like the song Like Me, which has some kind of playful sexual imagery at the beginning, but it turns a little dark as the song progresses. There's also Belly of the Beast, where we get some really gritty wordplay as Joey describes his surroundings and upbringing. His voice is particularly deep at this point on the record, and there's just a real sense of danger and entrapment and fear at some points in this song. Proving his versatility, Joey goes on to go absolutely bonkers on tracks like Number 99, which is loaded with shots at police. I love the line on this track where he says the last one to pull his card was easily dealt with. Also, the Badman reference on the chorus here is one of many tips of the hat to Joey's Jamaican roots on this record. Christ Conscious was another good, hard-hitting single to go into this record, not just for its instrumental, but because of how energetic Joey seems on the instrumental. And then the album kind of settles into some more easygoing cuts, a lot of which are very emotional, and while I really wanted tracks like Number 99 to be on this record, I wanted more Number 99s really going into this album, it's really these more sentimental cuts that resonated with me because I didn't really know Joey had it in him to do songs this emotionally moving. Not that he hadn't moved me before, but he really seems to focus on some very personal topics on these cuts. I love how on the song On and On, Joey sort of seems to contemplate his own mortality, sort of informing his fans as to how to think of him or remember him or celebrate him after he's gone. There's a line about there being heaven for us hip-hoppers, the big pun reference and wordplay that you'll hear if you give a listen to this track I thought was great. I thought the mention of Joey sort of envisioning his own gravestone was particularly sad and gripping. But Joey really takes his biggest risk on the song Escape 120, where he's rapping and singing over a kind of speedy breakbeat that reminds me of a lot of popular electronic music coming out in the 90s. But this track overall to me is maybe one of the weakest on the record because the flows aren't always on tempo 100% on this song, nor do I think the kind of melancholy, slower singing complements the beat. I just think it could have been done better. Lyrically and emotionally, Joey is pretty dark on this track, but he gets even darker on the song Black Beetles, where his life feels like a bad dream, where he feels like he's dealing with a lot of low self-esteem and inequality. And the haunting melody on this beat just sets the tone of the song perfectly. And on the final two tracks on the record, Joey really just sort of focuses on family, especially his mom on the finishing track, Curry Chicken, which was one of the sleepier singles to build up to this record, but in the context of this album, it really gives the entire LP just a glowing aura of down-to-earth, beautiful humbleness. It's a song where Joey sort of talks about how his career is taking him away from his family, but he sort of longs to be back with them, and even though he may be successful, it's all within the context of his upbringing and his mother and everything. He never loses touch of who he is, and I thought that was really pretty. Overall, I thought this was a great LP. It's consistent quality-wise. I thought there were a lot of great verses on here, great bars. Some people may sort of get bored with him off the bat due to his lack of novelty. He's not really trendy. I think there was a point at which he was trendy. A lot of people were hyped over him, and not to say that there isn't hype building up to this record, but I think Joey has gotten very popular thanks to his talents, but it's not because he sort of jumps onto any bandwagons necessarily. Don't go into this album if you're looking for like a really catchy, viral earworm or something like that. You know, go into this album expecting some food for thought, something you're going to dig into a little deeper, something that's going to stir your emotions a little bit. Because Joey has an incredible amount of heart, and that is part of what makes this album so appealing. The only major criticisms I think I have as a whole is that I think Joey could have gone a little bit further with his topics, but still he's young, and I hope that as he progresses, his ambitions grow, and the things he raps about become a little greater or wider in scope. And some of the cuts on here, specifically Peace of Mind, were just a little too easygoing for me, but that's about it. I'm feeling a decent to strong 8 on this thing. Transition. What did you think of this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Joey Badass, forever.